I overheard my mother telling my father that she regretted having me. I'm 24 now, and I still remember those words. I once overheard my mom telling my dad that she regretted having me, and even though it happened over a decade ago, I'm 24 now and I still can't get those words out of my head. It wasn't like I was sneaking around on purpose. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop or catch my parents saying something bad. I was 17, sitting at the top of the stairs with my headphones unplugged because I was trying to listen to music quietly. They were in the kitchen below, probably thinking the walls and distance would keep their words private. I remember the hum of the refrigerator, the clink of dishes as my mom dried them, and then her voice, sharp but also tired, saying something I will never forget. Sometimes I wish we had stopped after your sister. Having him was maybe a mistake. At first I thought I misheard her. My brain didn't want to register the words. I told myself she was talking about something else, like maybe she was referring to a pet we once had or something from years before. But then my dad said, "You don't mean that." And she laughed, not a funny laugh, more like a sad, bitter one, and she said, "I do. I love him, of course I do, but I regret the way my life turned out after he was born. I wasn't ready. I lost so much of myself." I sat frozen, my stomach twisting so hard I thought I might throw up. I pressed my hand over my mouth so they wouldn't hear me breathing. My whole body felt like it was buzzing, like every nerve ending was screaming at me to get up and run, but I couldn't move. I just listened as they kept talking, my dad mostly quiet, trying to console her, my mom just spilling years of pent-up resentment. And here's the part that hurts the most. She wasn't saying it in anger. She wasn't yelling or having one of those fights where people say things they don't mean. She was calm, thoughtful, almost like she had been carrying this truth around forever and finally decided to set it down for a moment. The rest of that night is a blur. I remember eventually tiptoeing back to my room, closing the door silently, and just lying in bed staring at the ceiling. My headphones were still around my neck. My playlist had long since stopped. And all I could hear were her words, looping over and over. Having him was maybe a mistake. For the next week, I avoided her. I couldn't look her in the eye. Every time she asked if I wanted dinner or if I had homework, I heard a double meaning. I heard, "You're a burden." She hugged me before school once, and all I could think was, this is fake. She regrets me. It's weird because nothing else in our relationship really changed. She still treated me the same, maybe even a little kinder. But for me, everything shifted. I started analyzing every interaction, every smile, every sigh when I asked for help. Was she hiding her regret all these years? Did my dad know? Did my sister know? Was I the only one in the family who didn't realize I wasn't wanted? Here's the thing. My mom isn't a bad person. She worked hard, she provided for us, she showed up at my soccer games and my band recitals. But the knowledge that she regretted me, not just something I did, but me existing, planted this seed of doubt in my head that never really went away. At 17, I thought about running away. Not because they treated me badly, but because I didn't want to be the daily reminder of her lost potential. I pictured her life without me. Maybe she would have had a better career, more freedom, more happiness. Maybe she would have traveled or written that book she always talked about. Instead, she got me. And she regretted it. One night, a couple of weeks after overhearing the conversation, I tried to bring it up indirectly. I asked her, "Do you ever wish things had turned out differently?" She gave me a vague answer about how everyone has regrets but that she wouldn't change her family for anything. I wanted to scream, "Liar! I heard you!" But I just nodded and pretended to accept it. Years passed, but the memory stuck. Even when I left for college, every phone call and holiday visit was tainted by that confession. She'd ask about my classes or send me care packages, and I'd smile and thank her, but part of me whispered, she's only doing this out of duty, not love. Fast forward to now, 24 years old, supposedly an adult, supposedly past my teenage insecurities, and yet those words still sit in my chest like a heavy stone. I'll be having a good day, maybe even feeling proud of myself, and suddenly I'll remember. She didn't want you. The weird part. I've never told anyone. Not my dad, not my sister, not my friends. Outwardly, I'm the same sarcastic, funny guy I've always been. Inwardly, though, it feels like my foundation cracked that night, and I've been carefully tiptoeing around the pieces ever since. There was one time, after a few drinks, when I almost confessed it to a close friend. We were sitting on his balcony, swapping worst thing my parents ever said, stories, and the words hovered on the tip of my tongue. But then I thought, what if I'm overreacting? What if I misheard her? And I swallowed it back down. Because once you say it out loud, it becomes real. And I wasn't ready for it to be real. Here's the climax of the whole thing, the part that still haunts me. Last Christmas, during a family dinner, my mom gave this little toast. She said she was grateful for both her kids, that we were the best thing that ever happened to her. Everyone clinked their glasses and smiled. But I just sat there, frozen, because all I could think was, she's lying. She's performing. And when she looked at me while saying it, I couldn't shake the thought that maybe she was trying to convince herself more than us. So here I am, telling strangers on the internet what I've never admitted to anyone in my real life. I overheard my mom say she regretted having me, and it broke something inside me that I don't think can ever be fixed. Maybe she didn't mean it the way it sounded. Maybe it was just a moment of weakness. But I can't unknow it. I can't unhear it. And the worst part? To this day, my mom has no idea that I know. So now I'm asking you, what would you do if you overheard something like that? Would you confront your parent? Would you keep it to yourself? Or would you try to forget it ever happened? After I moved out for college, I thought distance would make it easier. You know, out of sight, out of mind. If I didn't see my mom every day, maybe I could stop replaying those words in my head. And for a while, it almost worked. College had this chaotic energy. New classes, late-night pizza runs, weird roommates who stole your cereal but also became your best friends. I kept myself so busy that I didn't have much time to think about the past. But it turns out, regret is like a ghost. It follows you, even across state lines. The ghost showed up in the smallest ways. Like, I couldn't accept compliments. A professor once told me I was one of the best writers in the class, and instead of feeling proud, my brain whispered, don't believe him. Even your mom doesn't think you should be here. When friends celebrated their birthdays and their parents sent them surprise gifts, I smiled and joined the party. But inside I remembered the time my mom called me on my birthday and almost forgot how old I was turning. Dating was even worse. Every relationship I had was haunted by this invisible question. If my own mom regrets me, why would anyone else stick around? I'd sabotage things before they got serious. One girlfriend told me I was the most caring guy she'd ever dated, and instead of leaning into that, I panicked. I broke up with her a week later because I didn't believe I deserved someone who saw me as the best at anything. By sophomore year, the weight of that secret started affecting me more than I wanted to admit. I'd lie awake at 3 a.m. staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars my roommate had stuck on the ceiling, and I'd hear my mom's voice all over again. Having him was, maybe a mistake. I'd wonder if she ever thought about it after that night, or if it was just some throwaway confession she'd forgotten. Did she regret saying it, or regret that she felt it? I started writing about it, but not directly. In creative writing class, I'd make up short stories about characters who were unwanted children, or mothers who carried hidden resentments. My professor once circled a comment in the margin. This feels very personal. Is it? I told him no, of course not. It was just fiction. But it wasn't. It was me bleeding onto the page in disguise. One winter break, I went home and decided I was going to finally bring it up. I rehearsed the conversation in my head 100 times. I'd sit her down, tell her what I'd heard, and ask her if she really meant it. I wanted the truth, even if it hurt. But when the moment came, I couldn't do it. She was standing in the kitchen, humming while she cooked, the same kitchen where she'd confessed those words years ago. She looked tired, but content. And I thought, what if bringing it up ruins everything? What if she doesn't even remember saying it? So instead, I just asked her if she needed help with the potatoes. She smiled, handed me a peeler, and that was the end of it. And maybe that's the real curse of secrets like this. They fester in silence. Every year that passes without speaking them aloud makes them feel heavier, more dangerous. By the time I graduated, I had mastered the art of pretending. I wore confidence like a mask. My friends thought I was outgoing, funny, always the guy to lighten the mood. At family gatherings, I played the role of the dutiful son who cracked jokes and kept the conversation moving. But inside, I felt hollow. Like I was performing in a play where everyone else believed the script, but I knew the stage was fake. Then came the real breaking point. My sister had her first child. Suddenly, I wasn't just a son anymore. I was an uncle. And holding that tiny baby for the first time, something shifted in me. I looked down at her wrinkly little face and thought, how could anyone regret this? She was fragile, helpless, perfect. I couldn't imagine looking at her someday and wishing she hadn't been born. That moment filled me with love, but also rage. Rage at my mom for daring to feel differently about me. Rage at myself for still caring so much. I wanted to scream at her. How could you say that about your own child? How could you let me grow up never knowing if you really wanted me? But once again, I stayed silent. Because every time I considered confronting her, a different fear crept in. What if she confirms it? What if she doubles down and says yes, she really does regret me? Then the fragile hope I still clung to would shatter completely. So instead, I carried on. I became the fun uncle, the one who buys noisy toys and sneaks candy to my niece when her parents aren't looking. And every time my mom watches me with her granddaughter, I see this look on her face. Proud, maybe, or wistful. Sometimes I wonder if she sees me differently now, like maybe she regrets regretting me. But she's never said anything, and I've never asked. The strangest part is how the confession reshaped my identity. I started measuring my worth not by my achievements or relationships, but by the absence of regret. Like, if I could live in a way that nobody else regretted me, maybe I could make up for my mom's feelings. I became a people pleaser to the extreme, terrified of disappointing anyone. I'd volunteer for extra projects at work, even when I was exhausted. I'd drive friends to the airport at 5 a.m. without complaint. I thought if I was useful enough, maybe I could erase the stain of being a mistake. But of course, that's not sustainable. You can't spend your whole life trying to outrun words spoken in a kitchen one night. And yet, here I am, still running. The climax of this chapter came during my birthday this year. I turned 24, and my mom posted this sweet message on Facebook with baby photos of me, writing, "So proud of the man you've become." Everyone liked and commented, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. Because all I could think was, you weren't proud when it mattered. You regretted me. I know I sound bitter, maybe even ungrateful. My mom gave me food, shelter, opportunities. But love isn't measured in groceries or birthday posts. It's measured in the quiet moments, and in one of those quiet moments, I learned a truth I wish I could unhear. So that's where I am now, 24, carrying a secret that feels heavier with every passing year. I don't know if I'll ever have the courage to confront her. Part of me wants to, desperately. Another part of me thinks it's safer to keep pretending. Because if I ask and she admits it, then I'll know for sure. And maybe that's the scariest part. The idea that my mom might not just regret the choices around my life, but regret me. And so I'll leave you with this question. What's worse, living with a painful secret you can't forget, or asking for the truth and risking it being even worse than you imagined? By the time I hit my mid-20s, I thought I had found ways to outsmart the ghost. Work became my new shield. If college had been a place to distract myself with friends and late-night adventures, then adulthood was all about burying myself in productivity. I threw myself into my career like my life depended on it. I'd stay late at the office, volunteer for every new project, and act like every deadline was a chance to prove my existence mattered. On the outside, it looked like ambition. My boss called me driven, my coworkers said I was reliable. But if you peeled back the surface, it wasn't about drive, it was desperation. Because deep down, every late night, every overachieved goal was me whispering to the universe. See? I'm not a mistake. I'm worth it. But here's the cruel part. No matter how much I achieved, it was never enough. I'd get a promotion, and instead of celebrating, my brain would mutter, would this finally make Mom proud? Or does she still wish you hadn't been born? I'd nail a presentation and walk back to my desk buzzing with adrenaline, but the high would vanish the moment I remembered the kitchen that night. Success couldn't drown regret. It just made the silence louder. The ghost started leaking into relationships again, too. I dated a girl named Leah for almost a year, the longest relationship I've ever had. She was kind, funny, the type of person who could make a grocery trip feel like an adventure. She'd look at me with these warm eyes like I was her safe place. And every time she did, I felt this stabbing fear. Because if my mom, the one person who was supposed to love me unconditionally, could regret me, what chance did I have with Leah? One night, she asked me a simple question: "Do you ever want kids someday?" I froze. My chest tightened like I'd been punched. I stammered something vague like, "Maybe, I don't know," but inside my head, alarms were blaring. How could I ever bring a child into the world when I wasn't even sure my own existence was wanted? What if I turned into my mom? What if one night, exhausted and bitter, I slipped and told my kid I regretted them? That fear sat in my throat like poison. Leah eventually broke up with me. She said I kept walls up, that she felt like I didn't trust her with the real me. And she was right. I never told her the secret, never let her see the wound underneath. She deserved better than a guy haunted by 7 words spoken in a kitchen years ago. After the breakup, I spiraled a bit. I drank too much, skipped meals, avoided my family's calls. I told myself I was fine, just going through a phase, but the truth was, I was terrified. Because if I couldn't hold down a relationship, couldn't believe in love, then what was left? Work. Loneliness. Pretending forever? The breaking point came one night after a long day at the office. I was sitting alone in my apartment, the glow of my laptop reflecting on an empty takeout container. I had just pulled another 12-hour shift, and instead of feeling accomplished, I felt hollow. Like I was running on fumes, chasing approval I'd never actually receive. That night, for the first time, I seriously considered therapy. I'd always brushed it off before: too expensive, too time-consuming, too self-indulgent. But now it felt like survival. So I found a therapist online, booked an appointment, and told myself I'd give it a shot. And let me tell you, that first session was brutal. I walked in thinking I'd just talk about work stress or maybe my breakup. But the moment the therapist asked, "What brings you here?" I heard myself blurt out, "I think my mom regrets having me." It was like opening a dam. Everything poured out: the night at the stairs, the echo of her words, the years of pretending, the way it poisoned my relationships. I sat there trembling, half expecting the therapist to look at me like I was overreacting. But she didn't. She just nodded, listened, and said something I'd never considered. "It sounds like you've been carrying someone else's regret as if it were your own." That sentence knocked the air out of me. Because she was right. My mom's feelings, whatever they truly were, had become my identity. I wasn't just me anymore. I was the mistake. And I'd been living my whole life trying to rewrite that label. Therapy didn't magically fix everything, but it gave me new tools. I started recognizing the voice in my head that whispered your unwanted wasn't mine. It was borrowed. I began journaling, writing letters I'd never send to my mom, pouring out the rage, the confusion, the longing for reassurance. Some nights I cried harder than I ever had before. Other nights I laughed at how absurd it was that one overheard sentence had shaped my entire life. But here's the catch: even with therapy, I still haven't confronted my mom. My therapist encouraged me to think about what I'd want from that conversation. Validation? An apology? Or just closure? And honestly, I don't know. Because what if I ask and she doubles down? What if she admits she still feels it? Could I survive hearing it twice? That uncertainty keeps me stuck in limbo. I'm healing, but I'm not healed. I'm learning, but I'm still afraid. The closest I've come was a few months ago, when I visited home. My mom and I were alone, drinking coffee at the kitchen table. Yes, the same table where everything began. She looked at me a little wistful and said, "You've grown up so fast. Sometimes I wish I could go back and do it all over again." For a split second, I thought she meant do it over differently, without me. My stomach dropped, and I nearly asked her right then if she ever regretted me. But instead, I just forced a smile and said, "Yeah, time flies." The moment passed, and I let it slip away. Because that's the paradox I live in. I desperately want the truth, but I'm terrified of it. So here I am, caught between silence and confrontation, healing but haunted, stronger but still scarred. And that's my confession for tonight. I don't know if I'll ever have the courage to ask my mom what she really feels. But the question burns in me every day, and I don't know if I can live the rest of my life without an answer. So let me ask you, if you were me, would you rip off the Band-Aid and demand the truth, even if it destroys you? Or would you keep pretending, keep carrying the secret, in the hope that silence hurts less than confirmation? The thing about secrets is that they don't just sit quietly inside you forever. They wait, they build, and eventually, they demand a breaking point. For me, that breaking point came last year, when my dad got really sick. It wasn't sudden, but it still felt like it came out of nowhere. He had some heart issues, ended up in the hospital for a few weeks. My whole family rallied around him. Hospital visits, coordinating care, group texts about test results. And in the middle of all that chaos, I was face to face with my mom more than I had been in years. Hospitals are weird places. They make time feel stretched and compressed all at once. You sit in waiting rooms with bad coffee and magazines from 2014, trying to distract yourself, but every second also feels like it might be the one when a doctor walks in with news that changes everything. In those endless hours, my mom and I had more one-on-one time than I could handle. And every time she looked tired or sad, every time she squeezed my hand and thanked me for being there, I thought, "You regretted me. Do you regret me now, when I'm sitting here making sure Dad is okay?" One night, around 2 a.m., she and I were the only ones left in the waiting room. My sister had gone home to sleep. My dad was stable but hooked up to more machines than I could count. My mom sat there rubbing her temples, and out of nowhere she said, "I don't know what I'd do without you." And you'd think that would have been comforting, right? A normal person would feel touched. But instead, my brain immediately twisted it. "You'd probably be happier. You said so yourself." I wanted so badly to throw the words back at her to ask, "Do you even remember what you said that night? Do you know how much it ruined me?" My mouth opened, literally opened, but then I froze. Because what if this wasn't the right time? What if she was too stressed, too fragile, and I unloaded years of pain on her when she was already breaking down? So I swallowed it. Again. Like I always do. But something had shifted. Being around sickness, around the possibility of death, it made me realize how much I'd been waiting for the perfect moment to ask her. And maybe there is no perfect moment. Maybe the longer I wait, the more likely it is that I'll never get the chance at all. After Dad was discharged and things calmed down, I couldn't shake that thought. The secret felt heavier than ever, like a backpack full of bricks I couldn't take off. I told my therapist I was seriously considering finally confronting her, and she said something that stuck with me. Sometimes closure isn't about the answer you get, but about having the courage to ask the question. That sounded great in theory. In practice, I was terrified. I rehearsed dozens of versions of the conversation in my head. Some angry, some calm, some almost joking. "Hey Mom, remember that time you said I was a mistake?" "Yeah, no, that one didn't work." I imagined every possible reaction. Denial, tears, defensiveness, maybe even an apology. But I couldn't predict which one I'd actually get. Then came the family reunion. Extended family, backyard barbecue, kids running around with water balloons. My mom was in her element. Laughing, grilling, making sure everyone had enough food. I watched her from across the yard and thought, how could this woman, so warm and loving with everyone else, carry something so cold about me? Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I lingered in the kitchen with her. The house was quiet, just the hum of the fridge and the sound of her rinsing dishes. My heart was pounding. I thought, this is it. This is the moment. Just ask her. But I didn't. Instead, I asked something softer. Do you ever regret choices you've made in life? She looked at me surprised and said, of course. Everyone does. But I try not to live in the past. She gave me this gentle smile, and for a second I almost believed her. Almost. But then the memory of that night years ago slammed back into me, and I knew she was dodging the real question, the one I was too afraid to ask. That night, lying awake in my old bedroom, I felt this mix of anger and cowardice. Anger that she'd said what she said. Cowardice that I couldn't bring myself to confront her. I wanted closure so badly, but I also wanted to stay safe in the ambiguity. Because at least in ambiguity, there's still room for hope. The climax of all this came a few weeks later, when my mom called me out of the blue. We were just chatting about normal stuff. My job, her garden, my niece learning new words. And then she said, "You know, I don't say it enough, but I'm proud of you." And just like that, I broke down. I muted the phone so she wouldn't hear me crying. Because as much as I wanted to believe her, as much as I wanted those words to overwrite the ones I heard at 17, they didn't. Instead, it felt like a cruel joke. Like, how can you be proud of someone you regret? I don't know if she sensed something, but she kept talking, telling me how she admired my work ethic, how she was grateful for the way I'd supported Dad during his health scare. And the whole time I was nodding and making little hum noises, while inside my chest a war was raging. One part of me wanted to scream, "Then why did you say it? Why did you admit you wished I wasn't born?" The other part wanted to cling to her words like a life raft and pretend the ghost didn't exist. When the call ended, I sat in silence for a long time. My cheeks were still wet. My hands were shaking. And I realized something that scared me more than anything. I don't know if I'll ever trust her words again. That's the real damage of that one overheard confession. It wasn't just about the regret itself. It was about the fracture it created in my ability to believe my mom. Every "I love you," every "I'm proud of you," every Facebook post with baby pictures, they all feel tainted now. Like maybe they're just performances. Like maybe she's trying to convince herself as much as me. And so I'm stuck. Still haunted. Still waiting. Still scared. Because here's the truth I keep circling back to. If I never ask her, I'll always wonder. And if I do ask her, I might get an answer I can never recover from. So what do you think is worse? Living your life never knowing, or asking the question and risking the one answer that could break you completely? There's this thing I read once. Sometimes, the scariest part of telling the truth isn't the words themselves, but what happens after. Because once it's out, you can't take it back. You can't rewind. You can't unask the question. For years, I kept circling the truth with my mom. I'd drop hints, ask vague questions, test the waters. But I never dove in. Until a few months ago. It wasn't planned. I didn't wake up that morning and decide, today I'll confront the biggest secret of my life. It just happened. We were sitting in her living room. Just the two of us. Dad was out running errands. My sister was busy with her kid. The TV was on low, some cooking show in the background, and we were sipping tea. It was so ordinary. But maybe that's why it finally happened. Because it was ordinary. Because the moment didn't feel heavy, until it suddenly was. She said something about how proud she was of me for helping my niece with schoolwork, how I'd always been so good with kids. And instead of just smiling and saying thanks, I heard myself say, "Mom, can I ask you something? And can you promise to be honest?" Her face changed. Not scared, not suspicious, just curious. "Of course," she said. And then the words tumbled out. "When I was 17, I overheard you tell Dad that you regretted having me." The silence that followed felt like a bomb had gone off in the room. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Her mouth opened slightly, like she was about to speak, but no sound came out. I rushed to fill the silence. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I was upstairs. I heard you. And I've never forgotten it. Finally, she whispered, "Oh my God." She put her hand over her mouth. Tears welled up almost instantly. "You heard that." I nodded. My throat was so tight it felt like I was choking. She set her cup down with shaky hands and said, I can't believe you heard that. I can't believe I ever said that." Her voice cracked. And for the first time in years, I let the anger out. "But you did. You said I was a mistake. You said you regretted me. Do you have any idea what that did to me?" I've been carrying that for 7 years, Mom. 7 years of wondering if you even wanted me. By then, my own tears were spilling over. My hands were clenched in fists. All the silence, all the swallowed words, they came out in one flood. She started crying too, full-on sobbing. I didn't mean it like that, she said. I swear to you, I never meant it about you. I was talking about myself. About the timing. About how I wasn't ready. I was young, overwhelmed, and I felt like I lost myself when I had kids. But I never regretted you. I regretted me. The choices I made. The person I didn't get to be. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to believe her so badly. Another part of me screamed. But those weren't the words I heard. You didn't say you regretted yourself. You said you regretted me. I told her exactly that. And she grabbed my hand, crying harder, and said, I was wrong. I was careless. I should never have said it that way. But listen to me. I have never, not for 1 second, regretted you. You're the best thing I've ever done. The room spun. My whole body shook. I didn't know whether to collapse into her arms or run out the door. It felt surreal, like the ground I'd been standing on for years had suddenly shifted. We sat there for hours, talking. She explained how trapped she'd felt when she was younger, how she'd never told anyone because she thought it made her a bad mother. She admitted she'd said those words to Dad because she thought he was the only one who could understand her resentment. Not toward me, but toward the life she thought she'd lost. She said she'd been carrying guilt for years, and the fact that I had been carrying pain because of it shattered her. At some point, she hugged me and wouldn't let go. She kept repeating, I love you. I've always loved you. I'm so sorry. And I cried into her shoulder like I was 17 all over again. Here's the strange part. Even after that conversation, even after hearing her say the words I had longed for, I never regretted you. The ghost didn't vanish overnight. Healing isn't a switch. It's not like one apology erases 7 years of doubt. But something did shift inside me. For the first time, the secret wasn't mine alone. It wasn't festering in silence anymore. I won't lie, part of me still wonders. I replay her tears, her explanations, and a small, cynical voice asks, was she just covering herself? Was she saying what she thought I needed to hear? But another, louder part of me believes her. Because I saw the regret in her eyes that day. Not regret about me, but regret about the words she'd said, the damage they caused. Since then, things between us have been different. Softer. More honest. She checks in on me more. I've started letting her in, little by little, telling her about therapy, about how much I've struggled. And instead of brushing it off or getting defensive, she listens. She apologizes. She shows up. It's not perfect. The scar is still there. But scars mean healing, right? So now I sit with this strange mix of emotions. Relief because I finally asked. Anger because it took me so long. Sadness because those 7 years of silence shaped me in ways I can't undo. And hope, cautious hope, that maybe my relationship with my mom can be rebuilt. And here's my final confession. I don't know if I'll ever fully stop hearing those words in my head. Maybe I'll carry them forever. But now, at least, I also carry her other words, the ones she said through tears in that living room. I have never regretted you. You're the best thing I've ever done. So maybe the truth is this. Sometimes closure isn't about erasing the past. It's about finally sharing the weight of it, so you don't have to carry it alone anymore. And now I want to ask you, the strangers reading this, if you were in my shoes, would you believe her? Would you let yourself accept that she never really regretted you? Or would you always wonder if deep down, she meant it the first time?